Hi, my name is Sierra Mandelli,
Daniela Cano.
and we both are going to be the presenters today for speaking about Kabuki syndrome. So to start off, I'm just going to describe the definition of what Kabuki syndrome is. Our Kabuki syndrome is a rare genetic disorder. Has a wide range of characteristics that are noticeably seen and then unnoticeably seen. So we have some intellectual disabilities, distinct facial features, and there are some skeletal abnormalities. Some of the common characteristics that we're seeing are some wide-spaced eyes. There is a very high palate, also like the cleft palate. They have some low prominent ears that you can see. There is a photo onto our right side that shows some of these common characteristics. There is also the scoliosis and the short fingers that normally seen in the fifth digit. So here are some examples of what I was talking about before. Up here we have on the top left a cleft palate, as I said. For the right, prominent finger pads or that fifth shorter finger. Bottom left, the scoliosis, and then on that bottom right, the high arch palate. So also talking about our proposed causes of what Kabuki syndrome. Kabuki syndrome is caused by variants in the KMT2D or KDM6A gene. So both these gene variants, they do have some syndrome leading to absence of the proper enzymes. Some of these enzymes that have these genes distribute the normal histone methylation that impair some of our activation of these genes that are not only noticed in our organs and in our tissues. So these abnormalities of these, as I was talking about before, are developmental functions, characteristics, talking about those scoliosis, all those different characteristics I was speaking about before. And then some of the frequency and commonness of this syndrome. Kabuki syndrome is, like I said, is very rare. So it's about a 1 in 32,000 in newborns that is seen. But as the syndrome, since it is so rare, it does not just affect just boys or just girls. Normally, it's pretty even.
The slide that I'm going to touch on are behavioral manifestations. Some behavioral manifestations that are included as part of the diagnosis would be interrupting others or the class by blurting out answers, tendency to move around their chairs, get up frequently, or unable to sit still for long periods of times, fixated on certain toys or objects, again, due to their autism, repetitive motor movements, what we call stimming, which helps them regulate their emotions, and biting themselves or others. The next slide that I'm going to touch on is the impact on communication. So children with the Kabuki syndrome may experience speech delays due to palate abnormalities and hearing loss. An example of this is that we found a study where they conducted a study of 6 children that were already diagnosed with the Kabuki syndrome, and they analyzed their speech characteristics. The researchers evaluated several aspects of their communication, including articulation, pitch, loudness, and prosody. All of these 6 children already had delayed speech and language development and were already receiving speech therapy. Some common findings were that included articulation errors, unusual oral residence, inadequate coordination, and within the same research, 2 of these children were followed into their adolescence. And what they noticed is that although their articulation improved, their pitch, loudness, and prosody stayed the same even with therapy. The next slide that I'm going to discuss is impact on behavior. So children with the Kabuki syndrome may experience behavioral issues, including ADHD or hyperactivity, anxiety disorders, self-harming, sleep issues, and autism. Some common signs of these include traits related to obsessive compulsive tendencies, a strong focus on specific objects or activities, heightened sensitivity to certain stimuli like smells, sounds, textures, sensory processing difficulties, and oral fixation, such as like chewing on non-edible items. The next slide that I'm going to discuss is behavioral recommendations for speech language pathologists. So the first recommendation would be to conduct an individualized assessment to understand their communication strengths and challenges. The second one would be to observe the child and establish a baseline, and also know any behaviors that need to be targeted during interventions. The third would be create a behavioral objective. And the fourth is to use positive and negative reinforcements to help that child develop more traditional forms of communication and replace those maladaptive behaviors. And the last slide is behavioral objective. So the example that I came up with is Sally continuously blurts out during class without raising her hand, interrupting others in the process. The measurable behavior that's identified is Sally blurting out answers. The behavioral objective that I came up with is Sally will raise her hand before answering questions during a class 100% of the time for 3 consecutive weeks to demonstrate appropriate classroom participation.
And then here is our works cited and then some of the works cited for our pictures. Thank you.
You.